Welcome, everyone, to DEI After Five, the show that focuses on topics across diversity, equity, and inclusion with some of the brightest minds in the industry. Here's your hostess, inclusive culture curator and coach, Sacha Thompson.
So as you know, if you've been listening for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about, the changes that have been happening in the DEI industry, what has been impacting the corporations, but also our community, as a lot of anti-DEI legislation has come forth. And so what we'll do is talk today about how to leverage the strengths that we have. And so we are talking to one of the co-founders of Meet the People. Her name is Natalie Alberta Dusey, and she will talk to us about, how do we leverage those strengths? How do we get the best out of the people that we have so that in times like this, when we have flux, we can still move forward. So Natalie, welcome to the Speak Show.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
We're doing well. We're doing well. So for those who may not know who you are, can you tell us a little about you and Meet the People?
So I'm Natalie Dusey. I am one of the co-founders of Meet the People. We launched Meet the People in 2021. It's an advertising holding company. And the concept of Meet the People was because the two founders that I work with, we've all worked in different parts of the advertising marketing industry, and we wanted to concentrate on the people. And when I say people in people-centric world, it's to work at the clients, the employees, our third parties, our partners like Sacha, yourself, and everyone that we deal with, and how we interact with the people. So that is where the idea of Meet the People started, to be different and to be able to also work with all the different stakeholders in a much better way. And so that's Meet the People.
So, as I'm listening to you, one of the things that immediately comes to mind is this need for, and I've been saying this for a while, right, for us to get back to humanity, for us to get back to the human element of the workforce. And so based on what you all are doing and seeing, how are organizations starting to get back to that human side of things?
So, I mean, there's a couple of things, but I always bring it to inclusivity and bringing people into the fold. And so to be able to have all your different stakeholders be inclusive of what you're trying to do is a good starting point. And if everyone feels, especially your employees feel included in how you bring them into all the different aspects of your company, then you are going to get the buy-in, which automatically sort of starts off all the conversations that we are going to have later on in this in this podcast. Because with that start of inclusivity is where all the different topics of DEI, companies, the different people that you work with, or different stakeholders that you work with, the various industries that we have as an entity, as part of the world will come in. I always believe that's the starting point.
You just said something that I think is very important in this conversation, which is, even if the letters DEI go away, the aspects of it are still critical in the work, right? So you are going to have people with diverse backgrounds, going to have people that have, different experiences coming to the table. As you stated, there's also going to be people coming from different industries as well. And so what does that look like? Let's dive a little bit deeper into what does that look like to ensure inclusion is kind of paramount in those conversations.
So yes, so I would start off with how you bring them into your organization, either from the third parties that you your third parties as partners, your clients, and also your employees. Start from your recruitment. How do you recruit people? How do you acquire talent into your organization? With that right positioning of acquiring the right talent, you will then be able to bring the right people in who would also feel that they're included in the conversation that you're having and your day-to-day life. And then it's not even a selling point after that. This is part of the day-to-day life. I always use myself as an example. I've been very lucky in the different conversations that, in the different parts of the world that I've lived and work at. And if you're bringing myself or someone like me into your company, where as soon as they know that they are part of your organization without trying too much and they feel included, everything you do on a day-to-day basis work out for you and them, because it becomes more of a day-to-day work, and there is no ticking boxes. There is no why is this not being done that way? Why do I have to maybe pretend to be doing something or feeling some way? So automatically you get rid of all those type of conversations. And even if there is a conversation, you will have it, and then you will find a way forward, and then it will work out for you.
And I think that is a critical piece of this, right? It's how to have those conversations, not to avoid having those conversations, but what does it look like to create an environment where you can talk about inclusion, or talk about, okay, this is what I need, or this is, I don't want to say accommodations, because I think when people think accommodations, they automatically think compliance, and it's beyond compliance. It is providing people what they need in order to be successful, regardless of who they are or their background. And so these conversations that you're talking about really is working through, right? How do you discover what those things are? How do we discover, that this person over here might need something that this person over here may not have the courage to say that they need, but they need it as well.
I agree. And even in the interview, when you're interviewing someone and the way that you interview them, sometimes we forget that we have to see that the personality and how the personality fits into the fold. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that's the be all and end all of a conversation, but sometimes we are so involved in maybe wanting a certain image for our company that we don't bring the right people in. And when we don't bring the right people into the company, we end up not actually having the right DEI or the right mix of how we want things to be in the world, or how we want things to be for that particular company. So I always think it's a bit like, even working is a little bit like dating someone, right? Because then you end up understanding, do we gel with that person? And it's the same conversation we all have as co-founders when we bring different agencies into the Meet the People fold. It's a bit like dating. Is that agency going to gel, not just with Meet the People, but with all the other agencies in Meet the People, with all the people that we have in Meet the People, the employees, the client that we have, the type of client we want to have in the future? Is that going to actually work for how we want the advertising and marketing industry to also work and be viewed? And that has to be something that we all have to look at every time we're going through these type of processes, because if you can do that and lead by the example, and also not pretend this is what you're doing, but actually doing that, that would help everyone in that environment.
I'm chuckling a little about the whole dating analogy, because it is very, very true. And, I think so many organizations will get people that have the right look, right, for marketing materials, or to say, we're checking the diversity box. Oh, we have people from this background and this background. and they're not a good fit for the organization.
Mhm.
And so it's a very superficial way of making sure people feel you have the diversity, but you don't have the inclusion. And so how do you ensure you're not just checking the box, but you have people that have the right backgrounds, the right, I hate the term culture fit, but they can add to your culture, add to what your organization does, and they happen to have diverse experiences and backgrounds that also add to the diverse tapestry of your organization.
I really like something you just said. Sometimes people just look at the outside, or they think this is what we need to have to be able to showcase what we want other people to see us at. When Tim, Tom, and I co-founded Meet the People, we were very aware of what we wanted Meet the People to be. We didn't want the old world of advertising and marketing, and like a few other holding companies and group companies that have come through in the last sort of 5 years or so. That's the whole point, that we all wanted to change how things were working. And so I'm also very proud to say, when we started New Look, there was two men with a lady. They co-founded a holding company, and everyone sometimes go, is that because there is a woman as one of the founders? And what people hadn't really, until they read the bio and until they read the whole plan for Meet the People, they hadn't realized that Tim, Tom, and I had been working together for such a long time, that they didn't bring me in to tick the boxes, or I didn't work for them to tick certain boxes that I felt that they should have, but rather it was that fit, right? It was if we were dating in that world, we all had our parts to play in this organization. And through having the different cultural conversation of, you can bring this into it, this is what your skills are, this is how you are going to bring this into the big organization. So when you look at how the whole Meet the People work, what my ideas are sometimes and what I will see is very different from what the other two would see, and vice versa, the global CFO and everyone else. But that's the whole point of having a company like that. We're not all the same. We're all very different. But as long as you don't bring people in to tick the boxes, then you have a different conversation, or you'd have a different organization, or you have a different industry.
That might be the fear, right? When people are so stuck in, this is who we are, they want to change, but they're not willing necessarily to do the things that they need to change. That may shift who they are a little bit, and that is okay. That's evolution. That is growth. That is how you kind of get to that next level. It's not changing your core values, but it may change and shift how you operate. It may change and shift how you approach the work that you do. And I think that that's the piece that a lot of people are so caught in the status quo. We've always done it this way, right?
Yes.
This is who we are. So when you do that, that goes into like the psychological safety work that we have, right? People aren't going to share their ideas. They're not going to share their experiences if you're stuck in this, well, this is the way we've always done it, or this is who we are. And so it kind of runs counter to wanting to bring in those diverse voices and wanting to hear those experiences and having people that can balance, the conversation in ways that you haven't been able to, because that's where innovation happens. Innovation doesn't happen in keeping the status quo.
I mean, sometimes I think, and if you look at change, it's quite without even thinking, because obviously I'm based in the UK, in London, so I'm a few hours ahead of you guys. So when I woke up this morning, one of the things I read, which is going around, was DEI and how different it is from 5 years ago, and some companies actually now sort of either decreasing the DEI effort or not wanting to do certain things about DEI. And I think what we need to sometimes look at is what has changed. And I wouldn't want every company not to actually have DEI policies or procedures. But I'm also one of the big favorite who says, I would rather you are doing it than ticking boxes. Because if you're ticking boxes, then you're not really helping the whole conversation. So if someone is going to decrease their effort because everything they've presented 5 years ago was just a paper ticker, then I would rather they don't do anything today. And therefore, the employees are more aware how, and everyone in the company will be more aware how things are working. And if they want to decrease it because maybe in so doing, actually they would include more people, they would have a better conversation, and things will actually work for the better, then why not? I'm not saying they should take it away altogether, but if they can decrease it to make it better, if they can include people, if they can do certain things, it's better than actually just pretend you're doing it and tick boxes.
I agree. Right? Most people may think I don't agree with that, but I do agree, because I think people get so caught on those 3 letters that they forget about the impact. Like, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And many of these companies that are saying they're getting rid of their DEI efforts can't, because their customer base is diverse, right? So you have to think about, how are you attracting those of a certain age or another demographic, right? That's all DEI conversation. And so the marketing teams will continue to have that. Your client services teams will continue to have those conversations. HR will still continue to have those conversations. But I think we get caught up in, it's these checking the boxes within the organization of our employees, not thinking about, we are now a much more global workforce. And so you have people that are working across the world. You have to understand those cultures. You have to understand the nuances of language and conversation and belief systems in order to do work in those countries in a way you want to. You have to be able to understand the cultural dynamic of your customer and client base. So all of this stuff is critical to work during this time. And how do we get there? It's by having those same voices in the workplace. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not going anywhere.
I like the way that you presented the last part, because again, it's never going to happen. And sometimes I think the headlines always bring out the negatives, or there is a headline that is misunderstood. And I think maybe what the headlines should now be saying is, we always are going to have DEI, but the question is, what is everyone's DEI, and how do they see it? How is it working for them? And basically, if it's ingrained in you, and we have agencies in Meet the People as part of the Meet the People group, where actually the ticking boxes paperwork of what they have as DEI is so small. But when you're in that particular agency on a day-to-day level, what you see, if you and the clients see that and everyone else see that, they never have people leave and everyone is happy there. And that's the type of thing we should really aspire to. It shouldn't be always documented, or it shouldn't be something on paper. It should be, when I come into work, I want to feel that way. And then hopefully everyone would have that.
Absolutely. So the question that I have for you is, with the organizations that you work with, the clients that you all bring in, what is their biggest challenge when it comes to operating in this way, right? Operating that in a way that centers inclusion. What is like their biggest obstacle?
So I think sometimes, because we are a holding company with the agencies, sometimes I think everyone might assume that the obstacle is having the different agencies based in different parts of, US or Canada. And therefore there are obstacles. But again, I think this is where we at Meet the People, when we're actually acquiring agencies, similar to my example of dating, we go through that process where we make sure that the people are part of the Meet the People culture. The agency can come in as Meet the People agency, plus, the clients that they have. And so then, even if there is an obstacle in the beginning for a client, because maybe now an agency that they were with before is part of Meet the People, at some point, and in a very short space of time, when they understand the Meet the People concept and also see what it is all about, that disappears. And that's the whole point, that we're there to help the client. And actually, having everyone in different states is a good thing. Sometimes as we were talking about, sometimes you need the different cultures and the different people and the different mindset to actually innovate and to be able to bring new things to the forefront. So if we were all in the same place, then you're never going to have that. And so that's one of the big thing that can look like an obstacle, but actually when you then come into the fold, you can see that it's not.
So what I'm hearing is you model the behavior. You model what you want people to see and what you want them to experience. So it's not pie in the sky. It's not, oh, this is this abstract thing that they're talking about that's nice, how they operate. And so if they're operating this way, in this manner, then we do that as well. And it may look a little different for our organization, but we can do something that's similar. So anyone that's listened or heard, me talk about, I always talk about modeling behavior you want to see, because I think that is how you get people out of their own way, right? It is very possible. So Natalie, my last question for you is, how do you take care of you? How do you fill your cup as you're doing this work?
I think, look, and it might sound really cliche. I actually had the same, I hate to say, this personal conversation with someone this morning about work. And I did put on my message, it's very funny. Work sometimes is not work when you like what you're doing. And therefore, I feel that I've been very lucky in doing what I do now as the chief of staff for Meet the People, but also doing the people side and having a good day like today when I get to talk to people about DEI, or, why everything can be accessible to you, depending on, what you're doing, and nothing is out of the reach. I mean, in between that, if I'm not generally working, I'm very blessed to have a good family and friends around me. And again, it's how you live your life. And my family and friends, I'm very lucky. My friends are from all different parts of the world, really. So you get to have an amazing conversation with different people. You get to experience different cultures, different mindset. Some of them actually give you ideas for your day-to-day work. And in so doing, you can actually sometimes sit down and go, you know what, today has been a good day. I'm not saying it's always, great, but it's more to do with how do we make the world better for all of us? How do we make everyone inclusive? And I promise you, the things I'm saying to you as work is the same things I live by on a day-to-day level. And so my personal life has to be including people and being inclusive as well as when I'm at work.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So how can people get in contact with you or learn more about Meet the People?
So people can actually get in contact with me by going to the Meet the People website, which is www.meet-the-people.com. Or you can also look me up on LinkedIn, Natalie Alberta Dusey, Dusey. And hopefully everyone who's also listening to your podcast can also get to know a little bit more about me and more about you. And listening to the podcast, then they can sort of see where we are as Meet the People and where we're based. And I think you can always look for other people on social media. So, just searching my name, you can find me somewhere.
Natalie, thank you so much for having this conversation with us today. I think that it just really falls in line with everything kind of that I've been talking about and saying to folks around. We have to focus on the people, right? Them where they are. Remember the humanity in them, and remember that inclusion looks different for everyone. And so, being intentional about how we build these inclusive workplaces. And part of that is, as you just so eloquently stated, right, just around modeling the behavior of doing that work as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. I truly, truly appreciate you.
I do have a question for you though, as well. And I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you questions or not, but you fill your cap, because it's something I would like to know, so I can also maybe take that on board for myself.
Oh, it's so funny you asked that question, because somebody asked me that the other day and I'm like, I am prepared. Part of it is I know my sweet spot in the day of when to get work done. And so I don't stretch myself beyond that. So I rarely take calls before 9 a.m. because I know it takes me a while to wake up. And so I want to make sure that I'm fully present when I'm doing that. I also know that toward the end of the day is when I really start to brainstorm. So I kind of schedule my days where I get a lot of my calls done in the morning so that I can be creative and brainstorm in the afternoons or in the early evening. I also stop my day like between 5 and 6 o'clock. Because I know I want to focus on my family, my friends, other things that I do. And so I'm really intentional with that. And then I do a workout class twice a week. I'm not a morning person, but it's a 7 o'clock work class. But I do that. One, got to stay in shape. But also it is just a great way to center me for an hour in the morning. In a community of other people that are just very encouraging. And so those are some of the things that I do.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. So Natalie, again, thank you so much for joining me today. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning into this week's episode of DEI After Five. I hope you were able to, of course, get a couple of nuggets out of this conversation, but also remember that you have to be intentional about inclusion as we move forward. Feel free to tune in every Tuesday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern for new episodes. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast and to our YouTube channel. And as always, until next time, have a good one.